Welcome back to the Transfer Portal CFB podcast. I'm Brendan Heffernan, back to you for another week here, getting into our off-season coverage. And once again, I am joined by my man, Mark Thomas. How you doing, Mark?
Doing good, brother, man. Long time no see, man.
For sure. For sure. We've all been kind of trying to, get through all these preview magazine work. I think it's all coming together. Very excited to be sharing that with all you, very intelligent and attractive, transfer portal listeners and readers. I think that's all coming down the pike. Good things coming down the pike. And today we got some more good stuff for you, as maybe evidenced by my man Mark's background choice today. We're going to be sitting with a very happy and peaceful college football program, at least right now, with the Florida Gators. So Mark, can you tell me about why you got Mr. Mullen up there today?
After reading the magazine, not the magazine, but the article written by The Athletic, Andy Staples. The Athletic does a great job of writing articles, so salute to those guys. But yeah, man, he wrote an article which was kind of interesting to me. I guess he was talking about the downfall of Florida football as we know it, or just Florida athletics in general. It was a lot of interesting things in that article, but I guess some of the things that stood out was more so the financial part and more so of the football side of things, like how do you go from Urban Meyer, Charlie Strong, those guys down there, kind of, Charlie Strong defense down there committing Class A felony assaults every Saturday. That's how I kind of got into the world of college football, just watching those guys. And then you go from national prominence to the Billy Napier era, where you're trying to figure it out and how to get back down to it. Yeah, man, Florida football is just an interesting state right now. It has been for the last 6 to 7 years. I'm going from Muschamp from McElhaney to Muschamp and then to Mullen. There's a lot of things down there that just didn't really sit right with me. Because obviously they did for the most part, every coach did a solid job of recruiting, but they never were able to get to get those upper echelon guys. But even still, you were able to get some solid prospects. Still got a guy like Kyle Pitts, Kadarius Toney, and then you got Felipe Franks. Like you got some decent players down there. The first guys who turned out to be first round picks. But it was interesting for me to just see that they never really competed for a national championship. Outside of the 2016 year when they went to the SEC championship, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, man, I just think that Florida football is just in an interesting state right now. Because I know guys were talking about guys were very excited about having Napier as their coach, and now as the season went through, and it was let's get rid of Napier. Oh, Napier's not getting these kids, and Napier can't compete with the big boys in college football. But you have to give us the time. I think Florida has to kind of just readjust their expectations here. At once, you were Alabama. You were looked upon as the top dog of college football. However, things have changed. College football has changed as we know it. You got the transfer portal. You have a bunch of schools are using that to their advantage. Mullen may not be able to compete, or previous coaches weren't able to compete with the likes of Kirby Smart at Georgia or Nick Saban at Alabama, or coaches that was at LSU and Eddie O, and now you got Les Miles. You probably couldn't recruit, but there are also other schools that could not, that wasn't recruiting on that level, but they were able to be successful and able to sustain success overall. It wasn't like a flash in the pan. Teams have stayed consistent over the course of time. So I think Florida right now is in an interesting spot. They're going to have to do a lot of adjustment, but they also have a kid, DJ Lagway, that's committed, and he's starting to do a great job of getting other kids to flip from other schools. So the future could be looking bright right now, Florida, and down there in Gainesville. So It's going to be interesting to see, man, if they're going to really give Billy some time to fix this, because this isn't a 2 to 3 year process. This is more
Sure.
so of like a 4 to 5 year process. And I think, and like I said, in society, like we want to like how give coaches three
Mhm.
years and then, all right, did you fix it? Yes or no? Like you can't
Yeah.
really do that. Like you have to kind of let this thing grow and play itself out. So, I mean, overall, I like Napier. Napier's a hell of a coach, very respected in the industry. So I
Mhm.
think you give him some time and give him just that him and his entire staff to just grow and develop these recruiting classes. I think you're going to see great results in one day.
Yeah, I think yeah, you raised a lot of good points, and I do think the last, I guess now 15 years since sort of the last so the Urban Meyer era kind of came to an end. There has been pretty interesting because there hasn't been any real sustained success, you might say. I think
Mm-hmm.
and I think a lot of it is interesting because like you mentioned, like it's not like they don't have guys, like for instance, like McElwain brought in, a lot of NFL talent. Like Muschamp too, throughout that. They've had a lot of NFL players kind of in the last this era where they, haven't won the conference or sort of, been where they want to be at the end. So I think it's all kind of very interesting. Sort of how stuff breaks. I mean, a lot of what sort of the article in the Athletic was getting into from Andy Staples was sort of about various ways that Florida sort of was behind in terms of facilities for a long time. Mentioning that there was a 30-year gap between when Alabama had an indoor practice facility, for instance, versus when they did. Um, and I think they quote like sort of Steve Spurrier, kind of talking about like, oh, like we don't need that here, we don't need all these things when they sort of were behind in a number of ways, including having a football specific sort of space, which now they're in the process or have been in the process of sort of they leveled their baseball stadium to kind of make room for something new for both the baseball team and for the a football specific facility, which is kind of what you expect, particularly in the SEC at this point. Like I mean, there's UMass built a $120 million football specific facility in like 2018. So this is some obvious stuff that I think you could argue they've been a step behind on and are sort of moving that way. But I think the thing going forward is Billy Napier has been very clear from day one that this wasn't going to be a quick process. Throughout the time he's been there, he's been including on this offseason, he's been hammering home patience. And I think it's interesting. I understand to some extent some of the ways that people felt year one was kind of underwhelming. I mean, on the one hand, you have a quarterback who gets taken fourth overall in the NFL draft, and the offense is uninspiring, And I think a lot of that isn't on the quarterback. I think a lot of that is generally, I felt like the sort of what they had on the edge of their offense last year just wasn't cutting it. It from on a number of levels from their skill position talent in 2022 in terms of the routes. Like you watch the I think what kind of got people really high on Anthony Richardson is you would watch the actual plays and be like, oh wow, they're leaving like so much meat on the bone here. So I think I understand like some of the disappointment with that, the kind of like underwhelming success with having him in the room for one season and now step into probably the Graham Mertz experience for 2023, which is not necessarily something that I think Florida fans are excited about right now. But I mean, I think you watch, like I said, I think I'm very high on Billy Napier as a coach. I think what he built at Louisiana, uh, speaks like completely maximize that program. A program that had never won 10 games in back-to-back seasons before he got there. And they won over 10 games 3 years in a row. I think he had one season where they didn't win 10 games. I think clearly he's a good coach, and I think he was a great hire, and I really love the staff that he's built. And I think one of the things that really, really kind of rubbed people the wrong way at Florida about Mullen was I remember he would talk about stuff like, basically be the anti-Saban in terms of the like, oh, we're not as worried about recruiting, we got to coach the games or whatever, that kind of thing, which just isn't going to fly, and I think it's been clear that attitude isn't there right now. With Napier. I mean, the other thing I think that's worth mentioning about Dan Mullen, who I think is an outstanding football coach, in many ways. But where he was coming from at Mississippi State, it was a very different job in terms of what you need to do to be successful there. Like he was, you look at someone like Dak Prescott, who I think was being recruited to be a tight end out of high school by like LSU, and making that your all-time quarterback. So I think he was a guy who was sort of known for taking the 3 stars and sort of getting them through the program and turn them into, solid plus SEC players, which isn't the job at Florida. Florida, there's an expectation to be stacking top 100 players on your roster, like Georgia's doing right now, like Alabama's doing right now. Mm-hmm. And so I think that is what is the main task for Billy Napier. I don't think there's a chance he gets fired after this year, in some ways because of how his contract is set up with the buyout. Like Dan Mullen had like a flat buyout where it would have cost the same to fire him when they did. If we're firing him this year, fire him the year after. Napier's contract isn't set up that way. I think, as we mentioned, all the facility stuff, like I think he's safe this year, especially unless something really terrible happens. Like if they go 6 wins again, like I think he's fine. But I do think year 3 is going to be a little bit of a different conversation.
Oh, for sure. I think, yeah, Napier definitely has all what it takes from a coaching standpoint to be able to like out-coach a lot of guys, out-scheme a lot of coaches. But I think it's just a matter of just, like I said, like, trying to get these guys to buy into what he's selling. Like, you got to think, like, last year was his first year. So this is basically like Dan Mullen's team, but it's like you're trying to fit these kids into this culture. Some kids may not fit into it, so you have to try to get rid of the bad apples, and you have to try to get rid of, and have to try to bring in your guys to try to fit into your system, try to buy into what you're selling from a culture standpoint. But yeah, I think that'd be fine. But like I said, you have to adjust the expectations. You have to tweak it just a little bit, like dial it down, like a second. Like I get it, like excuse me, like I get it, like you got down there in Miami, like they're not on the best of terms as far as like they're still trying to figure it out as well. But also down the road, you got in Tallahassee, like you have from an in-state standpoint, like you have Florida State, who's down there killing it in the transfer portal, rocking out. So you look at that as like, oh, so like we're not the big dog no more. So we really have a lot of work to do, and that's okay. Like every college every college program goes through this type of thing, and I think they'll be all right. But from an SEC standpoint, I think you really have to lower the expectations a little bit. I mean, just steady, like progress. Like obviously, Georgia's the big dog now, right? And then Alabama's is sniffing the big dog. Mm-hmm. So now Florida is like, we want to say, as far as the entire SEC, we probably would say they're like middle tier.
Yeah.
Middle, almost to lower tier. But they can fix that though. We're just trying to like kill the transfer, like kill it in the transfer portal, and just try to like I said, recruit and develop. That's all you can do right now. Recruit and develop.
Yeah. I think I've heard I think what they've done in the transfer portal has been a little interesting in terms of bringing folks in. Like, there's definitely some guys to be excited about. I want to hope I'm pronouncing this gentleman's name, but I remember when he was in high school, Kiwana Goodwin, who was like the super 5-star tackle, number one tackle who went to Kentucky. He's there now. that's a guy that people have been looking at as an NFL player since he was what, like 14. He's 6'8", 340. So that'll be interesting. They brought in a lot of offensive linemen through the portal. In addition to him, they got a guy from Baylor, a guard from Baylor, like who was a consensus 4-star out of high school. So like they're doing some stuff, but I mean, they got a defensive lineman from Louisville that people are pretty excited about. Um, but I mean, I know one recently is so there are now two kind of the top. So I think SEC level defensive backs who left from Louisiana that Billy Napier recruited, out of high school. And the first one, Trey Amos, uh, he he went to Alabama. Florida offered him, so he chose to go there, which I think stung a little bit for some Florida fans.
Mm.
And he's going to have a chance to potentially be their second corner uh, over there, and kind of chose that over potentially having maybe even less competition in the room at Florida. And then now there's Cam Pedescalo is another, probably SEC level kind of like star who's also in the portal. So I don't know if Florida's in on him or what's happening there, but that'll be interesting. So I think, when you compare it maybe to what they've done in the portal to like a Florida State, um, historically, or I don't know, or kind of at the top end. I'm not sure that I would put them in that same category, but they have done some interesting things.
I am. I think it's only up from here. Like you don't really have nowhere to
Sure.
go but up. Like, you can't get no lower than. I mean, you could get lower than this. Like, you could be a few programs out here that's just on the struggle bus and has been on the struggle bus for like the last 5 years. But I don't think Florida, whoever's running the Florida program, I don't think that will ever let that happen. So I mean, get in the portal, do as best as you can. Just try. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if you're going to get the top guys out of the portal, but like you have to get guys that's going to be able to just like plug and play right away if you want to like kind of expedite the process a little bit. I mean, you could do it the Deion Sanders way and just kick up half the damn team and then just bring in a bunch of transfer portal kids if you want to do it that way. But that's going to make the process even harder because you got to kind of like, I think I talked about this last week. Like, you have to like think about bringing in an exodus of portal kids. Is you have to try to, like, these kids need to learn an entire offense in like 3 months, 3 to 6 months, depending on whenever they transfer. So, I mean, you have to have the thing about it is you have to have a good mix of portal kids and program kids. If you have a good mix of that, right, those program kids could help expedite the process and helping these portal kids fit into the program, right?
Sure.
Obviously, kids who transfer, obviously, like he ain't coming out to my spot, or competition thing. So
Sure.
at the end of the day, like, yeah, man, like at the end of the day, like guys are gonna come in with an ego, but it's just a matter of just how those program kids are gonna take these portal kids. That's kind of like the thing I'm like a lot of people don't really look at as far as like kids transferring into programs. Like, you gotta kind of like egos are gonna clash.
Yeah. What do you think the win total for this year is going to be?
Good Lord. That is a great question. Let me take a look at the schedule.
The non-conference is so they go to Utah. They go to Utah. That did home and home with them. Then they have McNeese and Charlotte, kind of two paycheck games. And then I guess there, and then Florida State is of course last week of the season, and from the West they play LSU at LSU November 11th. They get Arkansas at home, which I think this is like the first time Arkansas has played at Florida in like
I think
8 years or something. Like that's the one that people always bring up, is just like no one who goes to Arkansas gets to go play in the swamp. So that's cool. So that's happening. Yeah. So then to Kentucky this year, which they went down and beat them last year. So I don't know. I mean, it's
Uh,
not. Yeah,
I would okay. I would say ceiling for this Florida team would be probably 8 wins.
yeah, okay,
Ceiling and then floor, ooh, probably 5.
yeah, that'd be tough. I think right now there's what, four teams that I think generally people around college football feel better about between Utah, Georgia, obviously, LSU and Florida State. Like I think people expect those four teams to, or in Tennessee. I don't know if I mentioned them. I think people expect those teams to all be better than Florida this year, which is tough. So then like you're talking about Kentucky and USC or South Carolina that you think maybe kind of a toss up, and then you have Missouri and Vanderbilt rounding out the conference. So it's going to be tough. I mean, it's always going to be tough. If when you're trying to sort of go from being lower middle class to in the SEC to like kind of white tablecloths, if you will.
Right.
But
Yeah.
that's never going to be easy. But I don't know. I think I would put if they improve their win total by one. I think if they get to seven this year in the regular season, especially if
Mhm.
they get to seven, then I think that I think that you can feel okay about it, and then the next year, like a seven wins with like good trends. I think the
Yeah.
offense looking like. I mean, it's tough. You know, like I don't think like they didn't want Graham Mertz to stay at Wisconsin. Like they didn't want to bring him back, and I think maybe he can have like we've seen sort of veteran quarterbacks that kind of stick around for a while,
Yeah.
figure it out. I mean, I think he'll be turning 23 or, in his fifth year in college, fifth year as a starter, pretty much. So, I mean, we could see something there, but I think there's, structural things about, maybe the run defense, maybe just looking a little more polished on offense that you'd also want to see on top of maybe improving the win total a little bit. But I don't know. I don't know if there's any benchmarks you're sort of looking for as well.
No. I mean, man, no Jack Miller. No, what's the deal with Jack Miller here? It was just
Yeah.
he was one of the top quarterbacks coming out of high school.
Yeah.
I remember
No doubt.
watching this kid. I I thought he was. Now, I think him and Brock Purdy were around the same time, if I'm not mistaken.
Hmm.
I mean, I think Brock was probably one of the best quarterbacks I've ever seen up close and personal coming out of high school. But I think Jack Miller wasn't too far fresh either. So I don't know what exactly is going on. I think if I mean I don't know. I mean, hopefully Florida fans can help me figure this out. Like what's the deal with him? Because I don't think Mertz is it personally. I just don't think Mertz is it. I mean, he had his COVID season, his breakout COVID season during that time, but he just I guess guys just figured him out. Like I mean, he's a good quarterback mechanically and as far as like talent, he's solid. But it's
Sure.
like can he process everything else and put it
Yeah.
together on the field? And I think that's something with
He
Mertz.
was
I'm
he was
excited to
a
see.
5 star. He's
Yeah.
got like that pedigree for sure. Yeah, but anyway, speaking of quarterbacks, we were sort of looking around the country. I mean, I think, thinking about just overall situations at a lot of different schools. And I was, wondering sort of who do you see this year as sort of being kind of the quarterbacks that we're all gonna be looking to, throughout the year. Kind of I think be a little bit of diversity, is for the average college football consumer trying to kind of get into the whole stuff going on in the whole country. Who are you going to be checking for on Saturdays?
So the first person that stands out to me is down in West Lafayette, Indiana.
Okay.
Hudson Card. I thought Hudson was better than Quinn at Texas. I have no idea why he didn't get the job. I think this kid is probably going to be a top 5 quarterback in college football. I think honestly, I
Okay.
mean he's not going to get the media coverage that all the other guys are going to get. But I think when you watch his film and when you watch what he does, I think he has one of the best arms
Yeah.
in all of college football. Great ball placement. And I think this Purdue team could honestly make some noise in the Big Ten and potentially go to a Big Ten championship. I don't see anybody really stopping, especially in the West. God knows,
Hmm.
there's nothing in the West that Purdue can't handle. So I think I don't know who's the OC at Purdue, but I know whoever it is, I know they know the type of talent Hudson Card is, and I know the receivers that Purdue is going to be some unknown like some unknown guy, but he's gonna have a breakout year just because of the type of quarterback that Hudson Card is. Now another quarterback, obviously, I think we all know down the road, Sam Hartman down there in Notre Dame. I think
Hmm.
Sam Hartman is going to have some say so in the quarterback, especially when you talk about being draft eligible. I think he's going to try to make a case for himself that he should be one of the top quarterbacks coming out of college. I mean, obviously we know what Caleb Williams and a lot of
Hmm.
these guys are, Drake May, but I think Sam Hartman is one of those like not pocket passer quarterbacks, but he's able to just be mobile in the pocket and just like
For
stay and
sure.
be stout in the pocket and make throws. Like I think that's one of the most underrated talents that evaluators kind of miss on a little bit.
Hmm.
He can sit there in the pocket, make the throws. Um, he has good arm strength. He definitely has one of the best arms in college as
Hmm.
well. As far as like making those like comeback throws and like those timing throws, I think he's
Yeah.
definitely one of the more underrated quarterbacks in that category. So I think those two definitely stand out to me. So I don't know if they played each other. I don't think they played each other. I wish they
No.
did. I would have been
Yeah. Yeah.
that
No, I feel like
that would
Notre
have
Dame
been
hasn't been playing Big Ten teams for like the last. I don't remember. I guess they play Ohio State now. They have
oh
like a
well, yeah.
series with them, but like yeah, they had all these trophy games or whatever historic rivalries
I,
with like the Michigan schools that they cut out a while ago.
I was about to say that used to be a thing where they used to
Yeah.
play like Purdue and Notre Dame have some type of rivalry. So I don't know
Yeah. Yeah.
what's going on.
Probably some weird trophy. Some
Yeah.
piece of farm equipment.
Well,
Yeah. I think those are two good examples of transfer guys for sure. I mean, I think people have kind of under discussed Sam Hartman in particular. It's going to be interesting to see him kind of in a new structure because obviously Wake Forest is such a unique offense with the slow mesh. Uh,
mhm.
but I think he ran that extremely well, and I think it's one of the things a lot of people just like, I don't know, like it's a different kind of read and a different kind of calculus that goes to playing the quarterback in that offense versus like a traditional RPO kind of system. But I think it's the precision and consistency that he ran that for his 11 years at Wake Forest as their starter. I think it speaks very highly to his acumen and stuff. And I think stepping into a Notre Dame team that's very talented, but I think he's obviously took their lumps last year and, is looking to sort of establish a new identity for themselves. I think particularly on offense, with Tommy Rees leaving, with Michael Mayer, who's been their bell cow for the last 3 years. I think that's a very intriguing situation. Definitely one. Um, that I'll be watching too. I mean, I think another one of sort of maybe of shifting context that I'm still very excited to see would be Grayson McCall, at Coastal this year. I mean, I think certainly kind of the best, when kind of you look towards as the best G5 quarterback or sort of the most celebrated one that we have coming back. But with a new system, I'm not entirely certain how different the offense is going to be, especially because it was so optimized for the Jamie Chadwell, kind of shotgun triple sort of thing that they've been doing. I mean, one of the most entertaining offenses in the country the last couple of years. I mean, I think uh, so much of their personnel, like especially on the offensive line, is really optimized for that kind of thing. For smaller guys getting to the second level more often than maybe double teaming. Like I remember, this is kind of old news, but I thought it was just so sick when that offense really hit like the national conversation. They had like a 5'9", 225-pound center. Like
Oh yeah.
yeah, it was just some very cool stuff that sort of, before then it had been a couple years, since we'd really seen that kind of with from like a nationally ranked team. So I'm not entirely certain what the offensive identity is going to look like. I imagine they're going to be using his skills in sort of similar ways, um, with their new scheme. But I mean, he's kind of the guy that I think you can still put him in that category where it's like, okay, if whatever cable provider, streamer, whatever, these games are going to be on this this fall, like I think that you're always going to want to watch Coastal as long as he's there. I mean, last summer at this time, like Coastal's SID was like sending out Heisman like packets for him to all the voters. Like no joke. Like they were really pushing that. And I don't think that's there right now. Like I don't think them. I mean, for one, I don't know how high I am as Coastal as a team in total. Like I don't necessarily um I put them kind of in sort of that second tier of Sunbelt team right now. In terms of their return talent. But I mean he's just he's just a pretty awesome player. I think another for if we're looking for someone that we haven't really seen yet, but I think has the potential to become a household name this fall would be Drew Aller at Penn State. He's super young. I think he's like maybe a redshirt sophomore, maybe a redshirt freshman even. Yeah, he's 19. A guy from Medina, Ohio, 5-star who committed real early to Penn State. And I think a lot of people wanted to see more of him last year. We got, he started their bowl game. I got it a couple other times. I think clearly very, very talented, was one of like kind of the super high risers throughout his recruitment. He didn't really come on until maybe after his junior season, that he was really getting attention. He was one of the like best performers at the Elite 11 camp his year. And for those that don't know, Medina High School is like basically the only one of the only high schools in the state of Ohio that like throws the ball a ton. That like has that pedigree. Like, yeah, or with him, like, yeah. Anyway, that's a whole other tangent. But yeah, he's a guy that I think I've been interested in watching since he committed to Penn State. And he's the guy this year, and they got a great roster around him. I think this is as excited as I've been about a Penn State team at this point in the year in a long time. And I think that that's something that's sort of permeated nationally. Like I wouldn't be surprised if they're, slated as kind of a top 10 team or maybe in the first half of the, teens kind of to start this season. And I'm excited to see them. I think week 1 they play West Virginia. So that should be on national TV. And so that should be a matchup where, yeah, that should be a matchup that I think he can kind of really introduce himself in against a team that they should outmatch, especially on that side of the ball.
I'm definitely excited. I know we're a little off topic here, but I'm definitely excited for that 1-2, that young 1-2 punch they got out there. Happy Valley, Nick Singletary. He's one.
Yeah, they're gonna be good.
Top 5. Yeah, he's top 5 bag. Him and K Trinaldo, those they just get to it, man. I'm excited to watch them do. I mean, I didn't watch much of Penn State last year, but when I did, it always impressed me. So I'll definitely be watching Penn State a lot more this year.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, something I was also kind of curious about is you know, we didn't necessarily talk about this, but I think Penn State is really an interesting example of kind of teams with sort of as like the playoff structure has changed, as I think a job that becomes like a lot more attractive and like a destination for recruits. Because I think Penn State, there's a lot of years that they would have been in the playoff so far. Like if it was a 12-team situation,
Yeah.
being that like second or third Big Ten team. So especially with divisions going away where it's like, it was kind of tough because they always had Ohio State that they
And
couldn't get over,
Michigan.
and Michigan when Michigan
Mhm.
ascended, they just never. I don't think they played in a, unless I'm mistaken. I don't think they ever played in the Big Ten championship. Um, or so far, I don't think they've done that because it was Michigan State before when Ohio State was when it wasn't Ohio State. I could be wrong. Penn State fans can come get me, but yeah, I think that with just kind of the structure of the sport changing a little bit, like I think that's a team that every single year can expect to be on the bubble, if not in there. So I think that's interesting. I think that's going to open up some things for them.
Yeah, I think Penn State is just one of those teams, like you said, like they always get the bad hand at the poker table. It's like they always like they got the talent to compete at the national level, but it's always like Ohio State and then Michigan. It's like constantly every year, and they never get the benefit of the doubt. And I
Mhm.
think that's kind of like, I mean, it's not fair, but I mean, it is what it is. But I think Penn State right now, I think, like I said, I think they're probably one of the best teams right now. Like, I mean, I think this could be the year like they could catch Ohio State slipping.
Yeah,
I
I
think I
agree.
think this could be the year. 'Cause I think that offensive line, I think majority of those guys
Hmm.
are coming back, and they're gonna be in
Yeah,
that weight
they
room
were great last
better,
year.
and they're gonna be better than ever. I mean, obviously, I know Ohio State's going to be pretty solid in the trenches as well, but I just think like once that ground game gets going for Penn State, I think it's just hard for them to stop. And I think it's going to be easier for Drew Allen to come into the offense where he doesn't have
Hmm.
to do much. So once he understands, like if once he understands that, and
Yeah,
you let those horses back there run, I don't think if you just kind of ease him, he just kind of just like picking poison, making throws, and the offensive coordinator and not putting a lot on him.
yeah.
I think this Penn State team could be definitely scary at some point. I think don't be surprised if they knock Ohio State in the mouth. I want to be surprised, and I don't want people to be surprised by it because Penn State is just really that good.
Yeah, I think I would like to see them get Ohio State or Michigan. You know, I would like
Mhm.
to see them get one of the two. And I think if they don't, then I would understand being frustrated with that. Even if they win the rest, I mean, because I think that, and those are going to be, tough games, obviously, but I mean, Michigan's at home. I'm not sure if Ohio State's at home, but uh yeah, you would I think they Ohio State came to them last year, so it's probably in Columbus. But yeah, I think this is the year you want to see them win one of the games. You want to cross that off. And I mean, I'm not saying that, that they should change course as a program if they don't, because I think they're doing a lot of great things. They're the best recruiter on the East Coast of the country. They're the best in the state of Virginia right now, pulling players out of there. Like they're
Mhm.
running at a pretty for what Penn State is, I think they're running at a pretty close to their peak capacity right now. And I think the fact that I think they've got one of the more organized NIL apparatuses. If I'm not mistaken, it's like run at least sort of their main collectives like basically run through the school.
Mhm.
And however that's able to be done. And I think, seeing some of the players that kind of came back, um, I think might speak to that a little bit. So I think the future is bright there, and I think it's only getting brighter with kind of the change of the format to the sport. But yeah, I mean, I also think that they're probably going to get USC as one of their permanent opponents. Like I don't know, it's just like
Mhm.
a belief I have. I think that USC is going to get UCLA, Ohio State, and Penn State every year, which I think is kind of good for Penn State to an extent because like you want that marquee win on your
Mhm.
schedule, but at the same time, like okay, you're going from Ohio State and Michigan every year to probably Ohio State and USC every year. So, like I mentioned, like oh hey, divisions are going away, like maybe that's gonna help, but when I think about it a little bit more, like probably not. It's still gonna be tough. You're still gonna be in the Big Two conference. So
The big two.
yeah. Hey, it's real at this point. It's real. Yeah, I mean, For sure. For sure. Well, another thing that we were talking about is we're moving into a new era of college football, having a little off-season fun, thinking about the past, thinking about some of our favorite teams that we've ever seen play the sport, and kind of making some little fantasy national championship games. So I was wondering, you brought this to me, Mark. So what's on your mind with this combo?
So I wanted to do this conversation just because I think it's an interesting topic, just because we've gone through so many different eras and phases of the game of football as it
Mm,
has transitioned, especially when you talk about from a collegiate standpoint. Um, you go from 20, you go from, I guess, the Bud Wilkinson Oklahoma teams to the Bear Bryant to the Jimmy Johnsons at Miami to the
mhm.
Coach Osborne, Nebraska to the I guess the Michael Wade dynasty at Miami in the 2000s, and then USC, and then Florida, and then like like we've gone through all of these phases. So I was just interested to see like what will be like you guys' dream matchups. Just leave it in the comment section. Put it on Twitter. Tell us about it. So what would be your? So I'm gonna ask you first. What would be
Okay.
your dream scenario? Like top three games. If you had three games to pick from, what six teams would you want to see go
Oh
against each
man. Okay. I mean, just starting like the first thing that I thought of just like an interesting experiment. And this isn't necessarily like best team, well, maybe not necessarily the best team of all time sort of game, but I would want to see Cam Newton Auburn versus Georgia Bulldogs 2021.
other?
I would want to watch that because we're talking about essentially what I think is rightfully discussed as like the best individual offensive player of my lifetime, arguably ever the best individual offensive season by a player on a team on offense that had no other NFL draft picks, against a team that was like 14 or 15 deep of NFL draft picks. And I think also speaks to just how much Cam also changed college football. Like how, like, especially like and it's not just him, it's sort of a proliferation of other things, but just how much faster linebackers are now.
Yeah.
And with, and that this the spacing of the game being so different. Like, but I think a matchup of like, okay, we have Cam at quarterback and a Kobe Dean at middle linebacker would just be so entertaining. And I think, I mean, if I'm really just focusing on the offense and the defense, is what I'm talking about. I think Georgia is probably a better team overall, would probably win the game, but I don't know. I think would be exciting,
Yeah.
for sure. So I mean, that's kind of where my mind went first when you're talking about sort of fantasy matchups.
Yeah. So I'm gonna go with the 1995 Nebraska Corn Husker
Okay.
National Championship team
Yeah.
versus the 2003 USC Trojans. I think
Yeah, that's sick.
two different two different forms of offenses, but principles still stay the same. Both are smash mouth
Hmm.
based off of the horses that they have in the backfield. When you talk about Nebraska, you talk about Tommy Frazier, you talk about
Hmm.
Lawrence Phillips, Ahmad Green, those guys. Then USC, you had Reggie Bush, Lindell White. So both physical presence, but just to see like that Trojans defense versus that option offense,
Yeah. The high
what
form
like
option.
yeah, like who's stopping Tommy Frazier? Like who's like can these DNs contain? Are they gonna stay home? Are they gonna be
Yeah.
disciplined? Like is that interior? Are those inside linebackers and one of three techniques gonna be get disciplined and playing the dive? Like when
Hmm.
Lawrence Phillips get loose, like are you gonna really go up and tackle Lawrence Phillips like that? Like that those are things like I would want to see. And then obviously the if you flip it, 2003 USC offense was
Hmm.
just like a juggernaut, right?
No doubt.
And so Reggie Bush, Lindell White run game. Then you had Mike Williams at receiver. You had what was it Liner at quarterback? No, was that Palmer?
I think it
No,
was
that was
Liner.
Liner. That was
Still
Liner. That was
Liner.
Liner.
Yeah.
That was Liner. Yep. So like you had him back there versus a defense in Nebraska that was like I mean, I don't want to say it. I don't know. There's some accusations of some of the juice. I don't know. I don't know. But to see like those guys, because those guys like kind of play like downhill fast. They played
Yeah.
aggressive. Like, could those guys turn and run? Like, could those guys like run the alley? Like,
Mhm.
can those safeties and DBs like cover these guys? Like, can this front seven be able to fit the run and go up against a guy like Lindell? I mean, are you going to stop
Mhm.
Reggie Bush? So I think that's something that's interesting to see. That would be my one of my dream
For sure.
matchups.
I think it'd be fun to see Tommy Frazier in like a modern like option offense. Like not that I don't love like the old, I mean like I love like the flex bone, especially which I know isn't what Nebraska was running through those dynasties. It was sort of a different oriented kind of option football than sort of what we see now. But I don't know. I think that would be pretty interesting. I don't know what you think about that.
Now, I think I would like to see Tommy. I don't know if you remember this quarterback. He was at
Mhm.
Navy, Ricky
Yeah,
Dobbs.
yeah,
Ricky, I love watching Ricky Dobbs.
yeah,
He
for
was like a
sure.
short, stout, like chunky guy just up there on the center, but
Yeah,
he knew how to run the football. Like if I
no
saw
doubt.
Tommy Frazier in that offense like put up 50 a game. It's just
Yeah,
off him alone. You have to try to like key on
yeah,
him, and then everybody that opens up the offense for everybody else.
yeah. I
Yeah.
think that this isn't something we talked about, and this is straying a little bit away, but it's something that I think we need to talk about on this program. Uh, And if it's something I missed that we talked about in another episode, but I think it. So there's not going to be a full time flex bone offense in college football this year because Army and Navy have both departed to like the spread option, and so I think the only team that's going to be using it, which is Air Force, which is traditionally seen as like the not purest service academy. They've been using a mixture for a while. And Kennesaw State also dropped it last year, so they're going to be coming up to FBS, not running it. Georgia Southern's traditionally an option football team. They're not doing it. I mean, I think like every once in a while, Willie Fritz they'll go out in the flex bone, but like obviously that's not their main identity offensively. And it's they're sort of citing the there's a number of reasons to it, and I'm like a lot of college football hipsters or whatever, I have a strong affinity for the flex bone. So I'm just wondering sort of what your perception of that is.
I mean, in college football, I feel like guys want to kind of like adapt to the current times a little bit, as far as
Mm-hmm.
like you see a lot of RPO and stuff like that. But all of this stuff is our principle off of the option offense.
Yeah.
So I think for them to kind of switch, I think it's good, but I think it kind of like lose. I think college football is still kind of losing this tradition a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Like Army, Navy, like I would love to see them like guys like those slugfests of like what's coming. We run this
Yeah.
pretty much the same entire offense, so we know what's coming. Like it's going to be different for sure. Like I mean, because every kid isn't meant to play like in a spread offense, or like
Mm-hmm.
every kid may not want to. Like you're a running back, like you go play. Like I think of like SMU, right back in the day, the Pony
Yeah.
Express,
Yeah. With
right?
what they did.
Right. So like you could play, like you could still be successful in an option offense. I mean, as far as like running backs are concerned, because
Mhm.
number one, your body would be fresher. You're not going to take a lot of
Yeah.
beating. And then two, I mean, you can still like score a lot of points, especially like if you got like two capable backs back there that you like defensive coordinators need to have to scheme on. I think you open up the offense just a lot more because the guys gonna be focused on you. You can open up the pass game more. Like you can do so much out of the
Yeah.
option offense. So I think, yeah, man. I mean, I understand being current with the times, but I still think that's the tradition of college football because you're not gonna get that in the NFL. So this is like,
Yeah.
I mean, unless you want to watch some. I mean, for me, like Illinois is like 1A, like every school in 1A literally ran
Yeah.
ran the same entire offense. We were
Yeah.
like the only team that ran spread. So it was like, oh, okay, just the same thing. Like this is scout report. Oh, okay, basically the same thing every week. So yeah, man, I think it's definitely a tradition that's gonna be missed, but I
Mm-hmm.
think it's definitely good for I guess keeping up with the times.
Yeah, I think it's complicated because I think one of the main things we've seen is like triple coaches don't get jobs. Like I think uh like if you follow like any like high school coaches on Twitter that are about like sharing film about that offense, like they're talking about the Arizona Candy Mountaloa debacle like once a month. Of where if you remember he was basically he was going to get
Helps
that
to get the
job to go
job.
out there to go to Arizona, which would have been awesome for Navy and the service academies in general because there's such a stigma that you go there and that's the last job you ever have if you're a head coach. You know,
Shout out Khalil Tate.
people aren't hiring you out of there, which I think is something we're seeing right now, and I think feeds into part of why uh they're ditching the triple is like I think that plays into it. But yeah, you know, so I think for me, like I do really enjoy watching it, and I think for a program that has structural disadvantages, and I think there's a lot of programs that I think this could apply to. I think it just it just works, you know. Like
Yeah.
there's ways that it just works and it is efficient. And like if you watch the Armed Services Bowl from last year, where Air Force kicked Baylor's ass, doing a lot of under center flex bone stuff. Like it's like it still works, you know. And I think the thing that people say is like they changed the rules about downfield cut blocks, which was a an element of you know how all the FBS and you know FCS yeah, and everybody of how the triple sort of works is you have guys cutting down the field. Like I mean that's what you know, I don't remember the name of the Kennesaw State head coach, but he was like, "Oh yeah, like that's we're not as explosive as we used to be because we can't do this." Which I'm sure there's truth to it, and at the same time, like you see, like every option offense has like you know their tight end going across the field like split zone and then coming up and being the lead blocker like that. Like the option offenses that are still running are basically doing the same concept with their blockers going downfield and just blocking second level players without cutting. So I'm not sure I necessarily buy that you can't still run an under center triple with the rules being what they are. I mean, uh, that might be, you know, like uninformed of me, or maybe I might be missing something there, but I would just still love to see it. And I think if you look at a program like one of the teams I wrote a preview for was UMass. And I mean, if you're a school like that, it's going to have like institutional problems with getting guys in, you know, with recruiting. Like, you might as well do it, you know, and especially for them because they're an independent still, and I think that's what made the offense so well suited for the service academies is like you get good at defending the triple if you have guys like if you play it a lot, you know, which is why like Army and Navy looks like it does. But if you're a non-conference team and like every like, or I mean, you're going to have scheduling deals where you play people multiple times, of course. But if you're going to have guys where they're learning to play the trip, they're seniors that have never played against the triple before. You know, it's
Yeah.
not like you know Navy's in the American, so it's a little different where you have every week in camp and then every week during the season you have a week where you're doing all this stuff and that stuff like builds up over time. But if you're a true independent, like I think it's great, you know. So I'm sad that it's dying, and I don't know. I played in the triple like in high school, uh, coming up, and I mean I think there's also like if you want to be a real hipster and be like oh, you know that there's ways it's always going to live on because the triple is both an identity and just a play that every that ton of teams run, you
Yeah.
know. But beyond that, I think it's interesting. I do think it's a little sad because I think there are ways to be creative with it. Like you can still have shifts in motion to sort of put people in binds even out of that framework. So it's interesting stuff, but some I'm sad about, but on my mind.
Yeah. No, I think I wrote an article a few years back. I want to say back in like 2018,
Mm-hmm.
around that time when Kansas was going through their like
Yeah,
turmoil. I said that they should have run the option just because it gives them a better opportunity to win games because at this time I think this is Kyler Murray. Yeah, this is when
yeah,
Kyler Murray was at Oklahoma. Like, they were just smacking teams, but like the Big Ten, I mean the Big 12 offense was just like putting up
yeah.
points left and right. But
I've been saying that for years too about
like
Kansas.
Kansas couldn't do it, and I'm just like, whoa. You watch Army versus Oklahoma, like Army almost beat Oklahoma, and
Hmm.
it's like they were able to hold the ball and like beat Oklahoma in time of possession, and that was the key. That's how they almost beat Oklahoma, just all keeping the ball away from the high powered offense. And I just think that a lot of teams need to adjust to it. They need to
Yeah.
don't be prideful and say, "Oh, it's not a glamorous offense." Man, listen, this is college football. Wins
Yeah.
sell.
The dudes you're
Wins sell.
recruiting are already going to Kansas, like you're not missing
Exactly.
out on. I don't know. They have their own weird offense now. So I give them credit for having a unique
Yeah.
offense with Leipold and the TQB stuff that kind of made them fun and unique. So like they get a pass for now, but like, yeah,
Yeah.
if they were running like inside zone glance RPOs
Right.
uh, every other play, then yeah, we'd be having a different conversation.
No, but I think Kansas just figured it out though. So salute to Coach Lightpool. He's doing a great job. I said he
No
should have
doubt.
been. I said he should have been a coach at Illinois and not Coach Bielema, but that's neither here nor there.
Yeah.
They're both having great
Bielema can
success
coach
though.
though.
He can, he can. But I just prefer
Yeah.
Lightpool because I know Lightpool was at UW Whitewater winning a
Yeah. We
gang of
talked
national
about him a little
championships.
bit.
So yeah, man. So
Yeah.
keep
No,
doing your
great
thing,
hire for
Coach.
sure. Yeah, for sure. We're definitely pro Kansas in general and pro this current regime they have there. I think
Yeah.
I think that only more good results are coming. I mean, I don't really know what the Big 12 is going to look like personally. like I had two previews in there, but like I think it's hard to. I think they got a real fat middle in that conference. I think it's hard for me to tell you who the best team in that conference is going to be next year. Or
Texas or
I guess
Kansas
going
State.
forward, yeah, even especially after Red River leaves, like who's going to be in the best
It's
position
it's it's gonna come down to Texas or Kansas State.
this year? Yeah, for
Mm-hmm.
sure. Yeah, I guess I was thinking beyond that, like which I apologize for sort of framing that weird, but like after Red River leaves, like I don't know who we're looking at as like who's in the best position right now. Like I think that you can default like Kansas State, like yeah, has got I really liked them last year. I like where they're going to be this year, and TCU obviously has like the priors right now that you want to give it to them, but I really don't know. Like I don't think the gap between top and like I don't know. West Virginia's in a tough spot, but like I don't think the gap between like the top and like the teams that are coming in now, like it's hard for me to sort of project forward.
Yeah. I don't know. They West Virginia be sound defensively like they usually are.
Mhm.
So I mean, obviously TCU has all of the momentum, but
Yeah,
uh, I don't know, man. It's just something about the Big 12 is just it's never consistent. Like you're always gonna get a new dog every year. So
yeah, and like I don't know about like I think like I don't know how long Dana's going to be at Houston. Like I think if it's a tough year this year, that like they might be moving on. And I think just like
mhm.
I think they could like people have been saying this for my whole life, or pretty much watching college football is like how good uh Houston can be if they like maximize it. And I think they're in the best position they've been in since like I don't know since the Southwestern Conference fell apart to kind of
Yep.
get back to sort of their peak. I mean, we've had a ton of investment for years now, and they have all these advantages. So I mean, if they crush their next hire, or if I don't want to like start out throwing dirt on Dana Holgerson already, but what I think that's I look to them, but I don't know. It's just a weird league, with so little continuity. I'm not super high on Cincinnati going in there. I don't think it was a good decision for West Virginia to go there. I think they've had a lot of problems kind of with the geography of it all and kind of being, I heard it sort of put this week. It's like, oh, Texas school without Texas resources, is basically kind of the life you got to live
Yeah.
with that. So I don't know. I think that's the league I probably have the slipperiest grasp on as of right now for their long term future. That is.
Okay. So are they joining the conference this year?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
All the
okay.
schools are in
Okay.
this year. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
So it's good. Red River and BYU, UCF, and UC are all in there this year. So
Oh,
it's the whole weird one off year where that happens.
Gus back in Power Five. Ooh, boy. Yeah.
Yeah, Yeah, I mean that's a good point too. I mean being yeah. I mean I think that kind of speaks to what I'm saying is like, I think the teams that are coming in there now, like I don't know, I think they have a chance to sort of be as like I don't see them as super far behind the rest of the pack. That is with between Houston, BYU, I don't know, and Cincinnati and UCF all, at least in recent years have been super competitive or project like they can be.
I don't know, man. It's gonna be interesting to see. I mean, obviously, I'm a huge Gus fan, so I think
For
Gus
sure.
Gus is like the godfather of what we know as college
Yeah,
football. He doesn't get the respect that he's due, but hey, man,
for
you know
sure.
how college
Yeah.
football media can be. They don't really show the love and respect. But yeah, man, Gus got all my support this way.
Hmm.
So I think UCF might make some noise in that conference, year one. I
Yeah.
think I don't see why not. I mean,
Yeah.
they got the talent to surely do it. I mean, I'm not gonna say they're gonna beat. I don't know how the schedules is aligned, so I don't know if they're gonna cross stats with TCU, but I know
That'd be fun.
they're gonna give a lot of teams a run for their money. I do know that. So got to see what the chips fall for my boy Gus.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, yeah, I think he's undeniably got as much of a as any coach that's currently coaching right now, as much as especially offensively as being an innovator and having a major block in the history of college football. You
Mhm.
can't tell a story of it without him by all means. So
Yeah.
yeah. Well, I think that's all we have today. Where can people find you on the internet, Mark?
You can find me on Twitter at markmoney__.
Hey, that's what we like to hear. You can find me on Twitter at Hef the Reporter. Been lovely talking to you as always. Thank you everybody
Oh,
for joining. For sure. Thanks to everybody for joining us. And yeah, you got anything you're working on right now?
not just catch up on the magazine and man, just trying to get ready for the summer. I might have something cooking up this summer, so just be on the lookout for that.
Beautiful. All good things. All good things. I'm in the same boat. Well, appreciate you all for joining us. You can catch the Transfer Portal CFB podcast wherever you listen to those things or here on YouTube with our little visual medium we got going. So have a good one, y'all.